What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we are going to look at the template team. So we're going to look at overall ownership template, the top 10k template. I'll talk all through this as we go. We're going to look at what chips people have got left, which players we might use to kind of get us through the ranks or up the ranks and into that top 10k spot. We're going to discuss it all in this. It's going to be like one of those one-take type of videos, and we'll see how we get on. So if you do enjoy it, please do give it a like. Keep hitting that subscribe button. So this is a live count of my subscribers on screen right now. We'll come back to it at the end of the video. So we're on 249,291. Very close to 250k. I would love to get it before the Game Week 12 deadline. So if you've been enjoying my content, you haven't hit the subscribe button, make sure you do. Otherwise, let's jump into it. And we'll start off by looking at the chips, right? So the reason we use top 10k is one, I mean, really it's an arbitrary rank that a while back, it's what people kind of aimed for. That was seen as a good season. These days, there are so many more players playing FPL that it's much harder to get top 10k. So even like top 20, top 30k, top 40k, maybe even top 50, right? If you could regularly get a top 50k finish, that would probably be quite good. Because the higher you get up the ranks, the more luck you need to kind of increase that further, right? It's not to take anything away from anyone that's high up the ranks, right? I got nearly a top 1k finish last year. I had a bit of luck to get there, right? You all need a bit of luck to get high up the ranks. But the reason we use top 10k is because of that. It's the rank that people used to always get to. But also, it's usually a good indication of active managers, because obviously as the season goes on, more and more managers stop kind of playing, right? So top 10k is a good indication of active managers. Not perfect, but it's decent. This is all from live FPL, by the way. I've got a few screens on when we start looking at the teams. You can see there data from livefpl.net. Really good website, loads of info on there for FPL. I would make sure to check it out, and it's completely free as well. So in the top 10k, 93.51%. So this is after Game Week 11. Obviously, some people may have used these, may have used chips or transferred in players, transferred out players between Game Week 11 and Game Week 12. But obviously, we can't see that data yet until the deadline's passed, right? So after Game Week 11, 93.51% of people in the top 10k had used their wildcards. That makes sense. There was a lot of wildcard use around Game Week 7, 8 and 9 in particular. What's interesting though is the triple captain free hit and bench boost is all quite low. Unfortunately, I don't have the same numbers from this time last year, but what we tend to find over the last couple of years is we all don't worry about our rank if we're 100k, 200k, 300k or worse, because a lot of the people in the top 10k have already basically burnt through a lot of chips. But this season, it seems like there's a lot of top managers that are kind of doing really well and haven't also used their chips yet. So a lot of people, usually we get to the end of the season, we think, right, we're going to boost our rank a lot because we've got all our chips left. Well, so do a lot of people in the top 10k. So it's a little bit worrying, but obviously we are still not that, we're only just over a quarter of the way through this season. So nothing to panic about yet. We'll just quickly look at the overall chips as well. Obviously, looking at overall template and overall chip use, there's going to be a lot more managers that are kind of just switched off at this point, right? I don't know the specific percentage. I'd say that kind of stays the same throughout most of the season. Different seasons. So last year it was probably a similar percentage of people that had dropped off. Obviously, there's more players now. So you're always every year going to have more and more active managers, which is what makes it harder. So 50% have used the wild card. Not too long left to use it. Again, not too many people have burnt through kind of bench boost, free hit and triple captain. There has been some pretty good scores for the likes of Salah, obviously, throughout this season so far. So a lot of people could have done well on the triple captaincy chip, but there's no more than 20% of any of those chips used. So there's still a lot of people holding on. For anyone that's thinking about when to use them, right, you've really got to save them for double game weeks. I know that a lot of us have had issues using things like triple captain in the double game weeks because it never has worked out that well, but that doesn't mean that it can't, right? So usually bench boost, free hit and triple captain you're going to use quite a bit later on in the season. Obviously there was a little bit of an increase in bench boost used after game week 11, but that made sense, right? Because a lot of people had good benches. We saw people use it with like Livermento. Foster obviously got the penalty save as well, so it was a really good week to use it. I would still say that double game week is usually the best time to use it, but if you have got a good single game week bench, there's no harm in using a bench boost chip a little bit earlier, because it actually will help your planning later on, right? Because what happens is people get sucked into having to use the bench boost in a double game week. They completely change their thinking or way they're going to set up their wildcard team. And I think that can just have detrimental effects before and after using the chip. So I would still hold on to it just in case, but don't ever be afraid to use it in a single game week is what I would say. Okay, that's the chips. Let's move on to the template team. So again, this is the top 10k template team. So obviously, if you've got these players, they've done really well recently, so that's going to boost you up the ranks, which is why a lot of these players are in the top 10k team. Now, obviously, the question we have to ask ourselves is, should we just jump onto these players, or is there a way to kind of basically figure out the next template? That's what you want to do, right? You want to figure out what the next template player is going to be. That doesn't mean you should ignore these players, right? I think one of the things that the trap that people fall into is they have to go massively different to catch up with these people that are above us, right? These managers that are above us by quite a distance. But there's a long time in the season left, right? And if you think any of these players listed here are going to do well over the next few weeks, you should still bring them in, even though they're template players and a lot of people own them, right? So in defense, I could have probably told you this without even going and look on live FPL. James, Chilwell, Cancelo and Trent, a lot of people are playing them every week, and they've got Livramento on the bench to come on. Some people have played him last week and the last couple of weeks as well. That is the template defense. Now, I think defense is arguably the hardest place to find a differential right now, or to find a different player. The one thing that kind of differs to the overall template is you get Diaz and Duffy in there. Now, obviously, Duffy's been really cheap. He's barely missed any games so far. And Diaz has kind of been a popular player ever since kind of game week 1. Now, I actually think that Diaz could be a way to almost break the template. The problem is, right, Man City defence is better than Chelsea. And when I say that, I'm going off expected goals conceded, okay? I know that Chelsea have done really well for clean sheets, and they are a top defence. It just so happens that Man City is that little bit better, right? And it's not a huge amount, but they are better. And I do think over the next few weeks, like if I just bring up the Man City fixtures, like for a while now, like for a long time, probably up to Brentford away, that's a pretty nice run of fixtures where they could get plenty of clean sheets there. We won't go in depth about the exact fixtures they got, but there's plenty of clean sheet potential there. And to be fair, with Chelsea, you've kind of got the same. It's not really that much of a difficult fixture run either. Maybe Leicester away and Man United at home, the next two fixtures, depending on how those two teams play, which Man United team turns up. They might be a little bit more difficult, but there's not a huge amount in it. So you could potentially look at Diaz as a way to break the template. The biggest problem is Diaz doesn't have much goal threat. We know that James and Chilwell have a lot of attacking potential. So I don't know if right now that is the best way to kind of get around these players. Like again, like just coming back to this, okay, I'm looking at this myself because I've only got Chilwell. Do I want to really bring Reece James in for the next two fixtures? Possibly not. I think I could bet against clean sheets in either one, maybe both of those games. But then I look ahead and I'm thinking there's not many games where I would be unsure about Chelsea getting a clean sheet. They got potential to keep a lot of clean sheets over this run. The only possible saving grace for anyone that's not on double Chelsea defences, there's a lot of game weeks coming up, right? So obviously there's been the 2-week international break. James and Chilwell have played minutes for England already. Let's see what they do tonight as well, whether they get more minutes. And then it's a week to the next deadline. But then we get into midweek games. So you've got Wednesday, Saturday, Thursday. So we start to get some midweek games. Will Chelsea rotate those positions? They have the players to do it. Alonso could play instead of Chilwell. Azpilicueta could play right wing back. They could play Hudson-Odoi there as well. That's the only kind of little crumb that possibly means you don't have to double up. But I think if you're thinking about it, there's no harm in going for it, because obviously a lot of us have got good bench players as well, like Livramento, to come on if one of them misses out, and you just hope that they don't come on at all. So I think Diaz is one. Luke Shaw, obviously Man United have got some good fixtures coming up from like game week 15 onwards. He's only 0.88% owned in the top 10k. I know right now it doesn't look good. You'd need to see something over the next few games from Man United. Can they turn this the awful defensive performances, can they turn it around, right? If they can, then Luke Shaw could be a bit of a differential. You've also got the Spurs wing-backs as well. So Reguilon's 2.36% owned in the top 10k, and Emerson Royale is 0.1%. All these numbers might grow a little bit by game week 12, but they're not going to be massive. The only thing with Spurs I worry about is, will Conte, if things aren't going right, start start mixing things up and maybe play other players at wing back. We've seen him play kind of midfielders and convert them to wing backs before. I feel like Reguilon's going to be okay, but he got Sessegnon there. Could he come in at some point? I don't know. Spurs fans, let me know. Right now, obviously, it looks like Emerson Royale and Reguilon are going to be the wing backs, but could there be a little bit of rotation there? That's maybe the only thing that worries me. The only other defence that I kind of looked at is Palace. They're all under 0.31% owned, but they just don't have a huge amount of attacking threat. They're cheap for clean sheets, but you're not really going to eye up Crystal Palace defenders instead of Chelsea ones. So I think I think it's very hard to back against that defence. I think Diaz is the only one. Maybe you go for the Man City clean sheets and hope that the Chelsea clean sheets dry up. But looking at the fixtures, that is going to be tough. I think Chelsea will do okay. I think just one more quick look at it. Over the next 4, they do play Leicester away, Man United at home, West Ham away. Could those 3 teams score against Chelsea? Yes. Chelsea will obviously make it difficult. Their defence is very, very good. But again, I think if you're going to bet against it, now is possibly the time with the quick turnaround in game weeks as well. But if Reece James does well against Leicester, he's going to keep getting brought in. His price is going to go up. He's already up to 5.9 million. So it's tough. I wouldn't actively look to back against this. If you've got this template, then great. Goalkeepers I'm not really going to go into too much. I don't think there's enough points to be made up. If you're happy on Ramsdale, fair enough. Sanchez could be an option still once he's back from the suspension. And Guaita, maybe if you want Palace defence. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't look too much further afield in terms of goalkeepers. Midfielders, his salary is 99.98% owned in the top 10k. In the overall ownership, he's 76.4%. If you're one of the non 76.4%, just maybe give up for this season. Come back next season because Salah's been ridiculous, right? Rafinha, Foden and Bomo. So a lot of people still on the two cheaper midfielders. Again, midfield is quite difficult to find like a proper differential right now. If you've got some players in mind, let me know in the comments below, especially if I miss out the ones you're thinking about. So Gallagher is an option, 8.05% at Crystal Palace. I still don't think if you've got Rafinha and Bomo, you should really be looking to move them on. But Gallagher could be an option at 8.05% ownership in the top 10k. Could be a little bit of a differential. Son is only 17.27%, but we know the Spurs boys, Kane and Son in particular, their ownership is going to go up this week, right? A lot of people are going to look to bring them in. People have been talking about it for a while. Fernandes is only 0.38%, but where does he fit in right now? Like Man United's fixtures, not fantastic over the next couple of games. But they do have Watford away this week, but then it's Chelsea away and Arsenal at home. So I just think it's a bit too soon to be looking at Ronaldo and Fernandes if you don't already own it. Obviously, if you've got Ronaldo, then happy days, Watford away. You just probably hold him Chelsea away and Arsenal at home for this kind of really green run of fixtures. And he is actually in the overall ownership at 30.11% ownership overall. So if you're thinking about going without him, he is quite heavily owned, right? So that's someone to look at as well. Watford away, I mean, this week could be an opportunity maybe to go a little bit different with your captain if you didn't want to captain Salah at Arsenal at home. Ronaldo, Watford away. Obviously, Spurs have got Leeds at home as well. I'm not saying there's no risk involved with that, but if you wanted to do something a little bit different, this could be the week to do it. But yeah, Ronaldo and Fernandes, fairly low owned, but obviously Chelsea and Arsenal, not great fixtures maybe. Bowen's only 0.5%, but again, I just think it's the wrong time to bring him in. I think we're looking at him in a few weeks. Cornet maybe 0.47%. The problem is these are all cheap midfielders, but there's nothing wrong with that, right? We shouldn't really let price dictate our thoughts, even though we definitely do, even if we do it subconsciously. But again, if you've got Rafinha, you've got Mbomo, are they really worth moving on? I just don't think they are. And I know people are probably getting a little bit of cold feet on Foden, but again, we just looked at the Man City fixtures from a defensive point of view. From an attacking point of view, this is pretty nice, right? Everton is not bad. West Ham's tricky enough. Villa, we don't know what it's going to be like under Gerrard. Let's see. I don't think they're going to suddenly turn into a great defensive team, but we'll see what happens. Watford good, Leeds good, Newcastle good. A lot of good fixtures there. Obviously, with Man City, you are always going to have rotation concerns, and again, there are a lot of game weeks coming up, so they will get rotated. One way you could mix up the template with Man City is rather than go double defense, you could go double attack. So Foden is probably the one to go for. Grealish and all other midfielders are all under like 2.5% in the top 10k, so that is huge differential potential. But I think the one might be Jesus, right? He's 2.52% owned. You could possibly fit him in as a Vardy replacement if you're looking to get rid of Vardy, maybe bring him in, maybe replace him to put money elsewhere, maybe into Son, Jota, etc. into midfield. Jota's another one you could look to kind of get into this midfield to break it, because he's not in the top 10k template or the overall ownership or the overall template. The only other players really in there is Smith Rowe, who I do think is still a good option long term. You might not want to play him every single week over the next 4, but he's still a good option, I think. Still nice and cheap. Benrahma, I think, has got to go. I think in West Ham midfield, Bowen is the better option anyway. So obviously a lot of people are just going to be left over owning him from early on when he did really well. But I think he could be the one to go. So if you're still hanging on to him, then you possibly, instead of going for Domagoj Fekonja, you could go for Gallagher Bowen, possibly, instead. And then perhaps the only other players to kind of keep an eye on over the next few game weeks is maybe Aston Villa players. Like I just said, let's see how Gerrard gets in and how he gets the team playing. There's a lot of talk about him playing like a 4-3-3, Cash and Target maybe being attacking fullbacks and getting really high up the pitch. But are they going to be great defensive? I'm just not sure about that. The midfielders do interest me. So Bailey is 0.08% and Buendia is 0.05% ownership in the top 10k. So very low. The only problem is Villa fixtures are not fantastic. So Brighton at home and Palace away are not, like, realistically, the next 3 fixtures, none of them are that good from an attacking point of view, because Brighton defense has been pretty solid this season. Again, their numbers, expected goals conceded, are very good, same as last year. Palace is really good this year. Again, whether or not they can keep that up, let's see. But there's lots to show. There's lots of promise, basically, in Palace's defensive numbers. Man City really tough, and Liverpool away pretty tough as well. And obviously you've got Leicester in between. So next 5 fixtures are not that good. And even if you bring them in kind of game week 17, you've still got Chelsea at home to come, like, not too long after. So I think this is the time I'd maybe look at Aston Villa midfielders. Let's see who Gerrard plays. Let's see if Bailey can keep fit and if he does well. But they're potentially low-owned players you could look at. I mean, you could possibly bring them in for the Leicester game and then, I don't know, maybe rotate them or just play them whatever against Liverpool and then just hold them through. But there are other players you can look at. I think, again, a trap not to fall into is trying to bring these players in too early, because sometimes, I know, I've been there myself, you identify a player, you know you want to bring him in a couple of game weeks' time, they either do well or they don't, it doesn't really matter, but other people start noticing them as well, and you're like, well, I wanted that player first, but unfortunately that's not how FPL works, especially with all the content that's going out these days, right? And obviously the irony is I'm doing that right now. But yeah, they could be options, but they're just not options right now. We need to see how Gerrard sets up. And look, in 4 or 5 game weeks' time, the template could swing again. So I will say it's looking pretty difficult for defensive midfield to truly differentiate. The one place we really need some forwards to come back from injury. We need Lukaku back, we need Calvert-Lewin back, we need Bamford back. These are players that could kind of switch the template up a little bit. Looking at the top 10k, again, it's Antonio, Vardy, Tony. A lot of us are going to get rid of Vardy, right? So in some ways, the differential could be keeping him. Is it a mistake? I don't think it is a mistake, because I think there's lots of other players with good fixtures right now. And depending on how you're set up or how many or what funds you've got, you know, if you want Spurs players, for a lot of people, not everyone, it's going to be difficult to have Vardy plus a Spurs player. Some of you will have a setup already, or you're working towards Salah, Vardy and Son. And I actually quite like that, because Vardy's fixtures after Chelsea, Watford at home, Southampton away, Villa away, Newcastle at home, right? They're pretty good fixtures. You could hold on to him, but I don't think there's a massive issue if you did want to sell him. With Antonio, I think we've missed the point now where we're going to sell him, so we just hold him all the way through. And I still think Tony's worth holding on to. But if you did want some different players up front, then you've got Wilson, Newcastle, 0.91% ownership. That is really low in the top 10k. He's pretty much going to be nailed. Obviously, he does have some injury concerns, but Newcastle need to get some wins. I don't see him being rested over these games unless he's got a knock. So Brentford, Norwich and Burnley in the next 4, with Arsenal away thrown in. A guy that's nailed 90 minutes on penalties. That looks pretty good to me. So I like Wilson as a differential option. A few people asked me if I was bringing in Tony this week, but I could afford Wilson, would I go for Wilson instead? And I possibly would. I think the one good thing about Tony is he's a bit cheaper. You can maybe hold him for a little bit longer. But in terms of being nailed for 19 on penalties, Wilson's exactly the same, right? So I do like Wilson as a differential to Tony. And depending on how my transfers go, Wilson may well come in for me this week. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on that one. Jesus is 2.52% owned, like I already said. Kane's 22.67. This is all top 10k numbers. Obviously, that's going to go up. And then after that, it's really hard. Again, you got the Villa forwards, Watkins 0.52%, but you ain't bringing him in right now. Bamford and Calvert-Lewin are both under 0.25 for very obvious reasons. We need them back. And Edouard's the only other one, 0.73%. But again, is he really a better option than Tony? I just don't think he is. I think if I'm going for a Crystal Palace attacker, then I'm probably just going to go for Gallagher. So that is the template right now. That's the top 10k template. There's not a huge amount of difference in the overall one, apart from you get Ronaldo, Smith Rowe, Benrahma, and the two defenders that I spoke about. Plus, obviously, Sanchez, because he was really popular at the start of the season. So there's not a huge amount wrong with it. I think you have to choose whether you want to bet against double Chelsea defence. I may well do that because it fits in with my transfers a little bit better. And after that, I'm just hoping for the best that Chilwell or James, well, not Chilwell because I own him, but James just stops getting attacking returns every single week, right? But he's just looking so good right now. It's difficult not to see that. You just got to hope that maybe there's some rotation coming in. In midfield, I think Rafinha's a good hold if you've got him, but I don't know if we would need to be massively worried going forward for the next few weeks, just because the fixtures do get a little bit worse soon. They're not really bad straight away. Spurs away, Brighton away, Palace at home, Brentford. I'd be happy to keep him. I just don't think that's a set of fixtures where I need to bring him in, especially with the fixtures afterwards. So he's definitely a way to bet against the template. And in Bomber, I personally am going to hold, right? And I think Foden, people have got a little bit of cold feet on him because obviously he's blanked in the last couple, but decent enough going forward. So let me know what you think about those template players. Subscribers have gone up by 2 since we started recording this video, by the way. So if you're watching right now, keep hitting that button. We'll do a stream when we get closer to 250k. Let me know how you're going to break the template. Which players are you going to bring in? Are you even worried about the template, or are you just going to bring in players no matter how much ownership they've got? And I guess the other thing is, are you going to differentiate with captaincy? Salah permanent captain. A lot of people will stick with that over the next few weeks. If he gets another few low scores, just 1 assist, 5 points, could the likes of Kane, Ronaldo, maybe Lukaku when he's back fit, could they be a way to kind of go a little bit different? So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. And obviously, please do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I'll see you then.